Hello, brothers, and welcome to Sigma Old Man Channel. When you bet against a man who thrives in silence, why don't act shocked when your downfall makes all the noise? There's a strange kind of poetry in watching someone self-destruct without you lifting a single finger. And no, this isn't karma wearing sandals and burning sage. This is the aftermath of underestimating a Sigma male, a man who doesn't roar but whose silence echoes louder than any storm. Here's a cold, brutal fact. Studies in behavioral psychology have shown that people often misjudge emotionally reserved individuals as passive until those same individuals remove themselves entirely and shift the power dynamic forever. What happens next? The people who once thought they were in control suddenly find themselves spiraling, desperate, exposed, and clinging to the very presence they tried to manipulate. And let's be honest, playing games with a Sigma is like trying to outswim a shark in silence, blindfolded, with a paper straw as a weapon. Good luck with that, so buckle in. Because today we're breaking down exactly what happens when someone tries to play a dangerous game with a Sigma male and ends up paying in endings. Brutal, poetic, and completely avoidable if only they knew. Number one, they exploited your depth but drowned in their own shallowness. They thought they were smart. They thought they could drain your energy, steal your style, borrow your depth, and make it theirs. What they didn't understand is, depth isn't something you copy, mimic, or pretend to have. It's something you become through solitude, pain, discipline, and brutal self-honesty. You didn't wake up with layers, you earned them, and they thought they could sponge it off you like it was some personality trait you just threw on like a jacket. They wanted the emotional intensity without the emotional intelligence. They tried to tap into your mind, feed off your silence, and siphon your stability while bringing nothing real to the table. Every conversation was a download session, your insights, your calm, your presence. And the whole time, they were thinking they were the clever one, the one in control. But here's the plot twist. They were never equipped to handle the kind of energy they were trying to harvest. You pulled back, quietly. No drama, no warnings. And the moment you did, they felt the emptiness. It wasn't just your words they missed, it was the grounding. The sense that someone in the room was centered, clear, and impossible to manipulate. They weren't used to that. They're used to chaotic people who need them, fight them, or feed their ego. But you didn't. You were just there, present whole and untouched. Now they're left staring into their own reflection and realizing how shallow it really is. They're choking on the very air they polluted. They thought they could mimic your vibe and maintain the same kind of peace. But all they did was amplify their own chaos. You didn't do anything to them, you just left. And that was enough to break them. Because the truth is, they never had depth to begin with. They just had access to yours. And when that access got revoked, so did the illusion of control. Now they're drowning in a shallow pool, still trying to convince themselves they were the deep one all along. But no one's buying it anymore, not even them. Number two, they tried to mirror you, but broke themselves, trying to fake what you naturally are. They studied you like a blueprint, thinking they could replicate the entire structure, the way you spoke, the way you moved, your calm under pressure, your ability to own a room without demanding attention. They wanted all of it. But instead of becoming inspired, they became obsessed. Instead of learning, they started mimicking. Not because they admired you, but because they envied how effortless it was for you to be who you are. At first, it almost worked. They fooled a few people, maybe even got a little attention off your energy. But here's the thing about trying to mirror a Sigma male. Your reflection only holds if the mirror isn't cracked. And theirs was shattered from the start. They were trying to fake depth without the pain that shaped it. They tried to copy calmness without the discipline that built it. They wanted your results without your process, but something started happening. They began breaking down under the weight of the identity they stole. They started glitching, saying things that didn't match their nature, making moves that felt forced, reacting to situations with the instability they were desperately trying to hide. Because authenticity isn't a costume. You can't cosplay self-awareness. You can't fake non-reactivity when your ego's still in control. Now they're left confused and exposed. The mirror they used to mimic you became the very thing that reflected everything they're not. And people are noticing. The energy isn't sinking. The act is slipping. They're embarrassed, not just because they got caught, but because deep down, they know they were never even close. You never had to pretend to be anything. That's what made you dangerous. That's what made you different. And that's what broke them. They didn't just lose the game, they lost themselves trying to play it with your face on. Number 3, they underestimated your darkness. Now they can't survive their own. They saw your calm and mistook it for light only. They thought you were all peace, all control, all logic. But what they didn't realize is that beneath that stillness lives something far more dangerous, a darkness you've already made peace with. You've faced it, studied it, integrated it. Your demons don't drive you, they serve you, and that's what separates you from them. They never dealt with theirs. They let their chaos roam free, dressing it up as passion, confidence, or being real. They thought emotional volatility was strength, that loudness meant power. But while they were burning bridges and stirring storms, you were mastering the art of restraint. You knew your own fire could destroy entire landscapes, but you also knew how to keep it contained. Controlled darkness is lethal. Uncontrolled chaos is pathetic. Now they're choking on the very mess they created. They thought they could handle the consequences of playing dirty, but their own instability has turned on them. Sleepless nights, fractured relationships, spiraling decisions. Their fake power move became a self-inflicted collapse. And the worst part? You didn't even have to retaliate. You just watched, quietly, unmoved, as the chaos they unleashed started eating them from the inside. You're not unbothered because you don't feel. You're unbothered because you already walked through your fire and came out clean. You don't fear destruction because you already survived your own. So now when they try to bait you, trigger you, or shake your foundation, it doesn't work. They're playing with shadows they haven't mastered. You have. That's why you're grounded while they're unraveling. They wanted to see the dark side of you, but didn't realize your darkness isn't reactive. It's strategic, it's patient, and it doesn't chase validation. It waits, it watches, and it never wastes energy proving anything. Now they're left flailing in emotional chaos while you sit at peace, a man who never needed to explode to win, just remain. Number 4, they played chess with a man who was already on the next board. They thought they were being clever. Every move they made, calculated silence, selective kindness, subtle digs, fake support, they believed it was strategic, like they were playing some high-level game that you wouldn't notice until it was too late. What they didn't realize is that you'd seen it all before. Not once, not twice, dozens of times. You'd studied that playbook in your sleep. You didn't just read it, you outgrew it. While they were busy trying to trap you emotionally, mentally, or socially, you were already thinking 10 steps ahead. Not just reacting, but observing, letting them show their hand. You saw the manipulation, the projection, the ego, and you didn't flinch. Because for you, this wasn't a game, it was a lesson. One you'd already passed with distinction. They were just another reminder of how far you've evolved. They believed they had the upper hand because you weren't countering their every move. They didn't understand your silence wasn't submission, it was precision. You were letting the board play itself out, letting them overextend, letting them reveal exactly who they are without you ever needing to say a word. And now they're stuck, out of moves, out of lies, out of access. They're in emotional checkmate, and the board they thought they controlled doesn't even matter anymore because you're already off it. You're not just ahead in the game, you're building the next one, rewriting the rules and choosing the players. The space you're in now, they won't even get a glimpse of it, let alone a seat at the table. They thought they were impressing you with strategy. But how do you impress a man who doesn't even play for trophies? You were never after validation, attention, or approval. You were after clarity. And once you saw who they really were, you stopped playing completely. And that's what terrifies them most. Not that they lost, but that they were never really in the game to begin with. Number 5. They weaponized your loyalty, and now loyalty doesn't recognize them. They didn't understand what your loyalty really meant. They saw it as blind obedience, something they could bend, test, push, and manipulate without consequence. They thought because you stood by them, through the lies, the ego trips, the half-truths, you'd always be there no matter what. They mistook your patience for permission and your silence for surrender, but what they failed to realize is this. A Sigma's loyalty is rare, deliberate, and not built for repeat offenses. You gave them a kind of loyalty that most people only dream of, the real kind, not performative, not conditional, the type that says, even when you're messy, I'm here. But instead of valuing it, they treated it like leverage. They used your commitment to push boundaries, knowing you'd hold steady, until one day you didn't. When a Sigma retracts his loyalty, it's not petty, it's not emotional, it's precise, clinical, surgical. There's no drama, no warning speech, no revenge arc, just distance, stillness, disconnection. And that's where it hits hardest, because it's not loud, it's final. One day they wake up and realize you're no longer in the equation, no more support, no more protection, no more energy. And now everything around them is turning cold. Relationships they once depended on are crumbling. People are backing away, not because you said anything, but because your energy used to validate them. Your presence made them appear more trustworthy, more grounded, more real. Without you, the mask doesn't hold. People feel the void. They sense something's off. They corrupted the only pure bond they had, not because they didn't need it, but because they never respected it. And now loyalty itself refuses to attach to them. Every new connection feels shallow. Every bond is short-lived. Because once you've betrayed real loyalty, life has a strange way of denying you access to it ever again. They didn't just lose a person. They lost a rare frequency that made them seem better than they actually were. And now that frequency is gone, completely, quietly, permanently. Number 6, they thought they could rewrite your story. Now their own narrative has collapsed. They thought they were clever, that if they controlled the story, they could control how people saw you. So they started spreading half-truths, twisting events, leaving out key details, making themselves the victim and casting you as the villain. They wanted sympathy, attention, validation. And for a moment, maybe they got it. People listened. People questioned you. Some even distanced themselves. But here's what they didn't count on. Truth doesn't expire. It waits. And so do you. You didn't fight back with drama. You didn't start defending yourself in every corner. You let them talk. You let them run with their version. Because deep down, you knew something they didn't. Real ones always circle back. Lies always rot from the inside. While they were busy selling a fake story, they forgot to maintain the one thing that made it believable: credibility. And little by little, the cracks started showing. The timeline didn't add up. Their actions didn't match their words. People started asking questions, started comparing stories, started noticing that the person who was supposed to be the problem was the only one not reacting. Now their entire narrative is falling apart, not because you said anything, but because silence is louder when you have nothing to hide. And people are beginning to see it. The sympathy they once had is turning into suspicion. The attention they once enjoyed is becoming uncomfortable. Their words don't hit the same anymore. Their drama is starting to sound recycled. You're not just surviving their smear campaign, you're outliving it. And while they scramble to explain inconsistencies, you're evolving, building, moving forward, unbothered. The story they tried to write about you became the story that exposed them. They thought they were the narrator, but they were just a temporary chapter. And now they're stuck in a plot they can't control, surrounded by people who don't trust a word they say. In trying to rewrite your story, they've burned their own. Number 7, they laughed when you walked away, but didn't realize you took the power with you. They thought your exit meant they won. They thought you walking away was weakness. They laughed, mocked, maybe even celebrated. To them, it was the final move, the part where you disappear and they stand victorious. But what they didn't understand is that you weren't just part of the dynamic. You were the dynamic. You weren't orbiting their world, they were orbiting yours. When you left, you didn't just remove your presence. You took the structure, the weight, the silent order that held everything together. You were the balance, the calm, the focus, the reason anything functioned at all. And now that you're gone, everything around them feels off. The drama doesn't hit the same. The conversations feel empty. The energy is chaotic because the one person who brought clarity, who didn't need to dominate but naturally centered everything, disappeared. They thought they were the main character, but the truth is, you were the unseen anchor keeping the story from falling apart. You never needed the spotlight. You were the gravity, the one that kept emotions in check, the one that made the whole thing feel meaningful. The moment you left, the temperature changed, slowly, quietly. But undeniably, now they're stuck, still talking, still playing, still trying to create tension that no longer exists. But it feels hollow, forced. There's no rhythm, no momentum. Because the game they were trying to win no longer matters. You took the rules with you, you took the direction, you took the value. And the worst part for them, there's no way to get it back. You didn't storm out, you didn't cause a scene, you withdrew cleanly. And that type of exit, it leaves a silence that can't be filled. They're trapped in a vacuum now, replaying a game that no longer has a prize, realizing too late that your absence wasn't a loss. It was a reset for you and a collapse for them. Number 8. They mocked your detachment until it became their curse. They couldn't stop talking about how emotionally unavailable you were. They called you distant, too quiet, too calm. They mistook your emotional discipline for coldness, your boundaries for ego. They laughed at how little you reacted, said you didn't care enough, feel enough, give enough. But what they never understood is that your detachment wasn't a glitch. It was a defense system. You weren't closed off because you lacked depth. You were guarded because you'd been deep, and you knew what it cost to let the wrong people too far in. You had already paid the price of overextending your empathy, and this time you weren't going to hand it out like candy. But they couldn't see that, or maybe they didn't want to. Instead, they mocked it, tried to push past it, and when it didn't budge, they labeled it as weakness, so they played games, tried to trigger you. Thought they could thaw you out with manipulation or break you open with chaos, but all they did was show you why your walls were there in the first place. And when you finally detached for real, fully, finally, and forever, they didn't get the dramatic reaction they were hoping for. They got silence, closure through absence. And that silence hit harder than any argument ever could. Now they're locked out. Not by a block button or a public fallout, but by something much scarier, your complete indifference. They want access again, but the bridge is gone. Not burnt in anger, but erased in clarity. You saw who they were, and your detachment moved from caution to permanence. There's nothing left to rebuild because they never valued the foundation in the first place. Now they sit with the consequences. They mocked your emotional restraint, but now they crave the very energy they once dismissed. They're spiraling in their own noise while you remain unmoved, proof that detachment isn't emptiness, it's power. And the moment they lost access to yours, they finally realized what they had. But it's too late. You're not cold, you're just done. Number 9, they tried to haunt you with your past. Now they're haunted by theirs. They thought digging up your past would break you. They reached into your history, grabbed your mistakes, your scars, your regrets, and tried to throw them at you like weapons. They wanted you second-guessing yourself. They wanted you emotionally rattled. Because if they could control how you felt, they could control how you moved. But they made one critical mistake. You're a Sigma male. You don't run from your past. You study it. You dissect it. You learn from it in silence, and then you file it into cold memory. Not for pain, but for precision. Every dark chapter they tried to use against you had already been processed, mastered, and turned into strategy. You're not ashamed of your wounds. You're aware of what they taught you. That's the difference. So when they tried to use your past to destabilize you, all they did was expose how weak their present is. They're still haunted by their own mistakes, the ones they buried, denied, or blamed on others. They project because they've never confronted. And the ghosts they tried to unleash on you, they weren't yours. They were reflections of themselves, and now those same ghosts are eating them alive. They see you thriving in silence, focused, detached, unbothered, and it rattles them because you were supposed to be broken. You were supposed to still be carrying shame, but instead you're sharper, cleaner, more calculated. And they're the ones who can't sleep. They're the ones drowning in what they never resolved. You're not haunted, they are. They thought resurrecting your past would slow you down, but you don't fear resurrection. You've already died and rebuilt yourself 1,000 times in silence. And now they're watching you move forward while they're stuck being chased by things they never had the courage to face. The irony? They tried to curse you with memory, but now it's their memory that's cursing them. Number 10. They thought you were just another player, but you were the architect of the whole arena. They sized you up like you were just another pawn in their little game. Someone they could manipulate, provoke, read, and outmaneuver. They believed you were just playing the same shallow game everyone else plays. Status, ego, emotional control. They thought they were the puppet master, and you were just another one of their pieces. But what they failed to grasp is that while they were busy playing games, you were busy designing the entire arena. You weren't reacting. You were mapping. You weren't competing. You were calculating. Every move they made, every test they threw your way, It wasn't surprising to you. You'd already accounted for it. You let them think they were outsmarting you because that illusion exposed exactly who they were. And the more confident they became, the more careless their moves got. What they didn't understand is that you don't play for short-term wins. You play for total outcomes. You let them play their games. You let them make their moves. And slowly, they walked themselves into exactly the outcome you knew they would, not because you manipulated it, but because you knew the pattern. You saw the ego, you saw the insecurity, you saw the desperation dressed up as confidence, and you factored all of it into your vision. Now they're looking around and realizing none of this was random, that the moment they tried to outplay you, they were already stepping into a situation designed to reveal their hand. The trap wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was subtle, slow, psychological, and airtight. Because that's how architects operate, quiet, focused, ruthless with their precision. They thought they were playing chess with someone on their level, but they weren't playing chess. They were inside a blueprint, and their collapse was drafted long before they noticed. Now they're scrambling, confused and exposed, not because you attacked, but because they walked straight into a reality you built without ever realizing they were the test subject. And the scariest part for them now, you're already building the next level. They just won't be invited. Number 11, they turned you into the villain, but now life is writing them as the tragic fool. They were desperate to control the narrative, so they painted you as the villain, the cold one, the selfish one, the problem. They ran with the story that made them look innocent and wounded, and you were cast as the monster. Not because it was true, but because it gave them sympathy, it gave them attention, it gave them power, at least for a moment. They twisted conversations, edited memories, and left out everything that would have revealed their own chaos. They needed a villain to make themselves feel like the victim, and you were the easiest target, because you didn't fight back. You didn't explain. You didn't chase people down to prove your side. You let them talk, let them post, let them play their role, and that silence, that's what undid them. Because life doesn't need your defense. It handles truth with brutal accuracy, and it's doing exactly that. Slowly, publicly, and without your help, their story is collapsing. People are catching on. They're seeing the cracks, the inconsistencies, the manipulation dressed up as sadness, the ego wrapped in emotional breakdowns, and now no one's buying the act anymore. The person who worked so hard to make you look like the villain is now unraveling in full view. Their life is starting to mirror the very chaos they tried to pin on you. The ones who once believed them are going silent. Some are walking away. Some are watching from a distance, realizing you weren't the destroyer. You were the warning. You stayed quiet. They told stories. But now life is telling the truth. And the plot twist is cruel. The villain they tried to make you into is now looking like the most grounded one in the entire situation. And them? They've become the cautionary tale, the tragic fool in a play they directed and starred in. All you had to do was leave. Now the story is writing itself, and you didn't even have to pick up the pen. Number 12. They took a swing at the quiet one. Now they're bleeding in a fight you never had to touch. They thought quiet meant defenseless, that because you weren't loud, confrontational, or emotionally reactive, you were an easy target. So they took the swing, tried to provoke you, undermine you, maybe even humiliate you. They wanted a reaction. They wanted you to lose composure, to lash out, to fall into their chaos so they could say, "See, told you he wasn't who you thought he was." But you didn't give them what they wanted. You didn't scream, clap back, or play their game. You just stepped back, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. No need for revenge, no messy breakdown, no passive-aggressive messages or attention-seeking moves, just silence. And that silence hit harder than anything you could have said. Because the truth is, you knew something they didn't. Real power doesn't swing back, it watches. It observes, it lets time and energy do the work. And slowly that's exactly what happened. The same people they tried to impress with your downfall started noticing something wasn't right. Their story didn't add up, their behavior started crumbling, the cracks widened, and the image they built of themselves started to collapse under its own weight. Now they're bleeding, not physically but emotionally, reputationally, spiritually. They're losing respect, connections, peace of mind, and you didn't have to touch a thing. No retaliation, no drama, no public call-outs, just removal. And that removal stripped them of the energy they once used to feel powerful. While they spiral, you're centered. While they beg for attention, you're building in silence. While they try to make sense of how it all slipped away, you're already 10 steps ahead, unbothered, unshaken, untouchable. They came for the quiet one, but they forgot. It's always the quiet one who understands restraint, who calculates the cost of chaos, and who walks away knowing one brutal truth. The loudest revenge is not revenge at all. It's peace. And they can't stand that you found it. Every move they made, every game they played, every attempt to outsmart, manipulate, or break you only revealed one thing. They never understood who they were dealing with. They thought your silence meant weakness. They thought your patience meant permission. They thought your distance meant disinterest. But what they were really witnessing was power under control. You weren't just one step ahead, you were operating in an entirely different reality. While they were busy plotting twists, you were already at the final chapter, quietly watching the story unfold exactly as you predicted. You didn't scream, you didn't fight, you didn't need to. Because when a Sigma walks away, the entire dynamic collapses behind him. They tried to weaponize your loyalty, twist your past, mirror your essence. But every time they did, they only exposed their own emptiness. They mocked your detachment until they realized it was the only thing keeping them relevant. They played a dangerous game thinking you were just another player, but you were never in it for ego, control, or revenge. You were in it for clarity, and once you had it, you were gone. Now they're trapped in endings they created with their own hands, lost in games that no longer matter, haunted by the very shadows they tried to throw at you. And you're not just free, you're untouchable. This isn't about getting even. This isn't about proving a point. This is about becoming so grounded, so clear, so unavailable to chaos that their downfall becomes nothing more than a background noise to your elevation. So let them wonder, let them obsess, let them unravel. Because when a Sigma rises, he doesn't just move on, he builds a world they'll never be invited to enter again. If this message resonated with you, if you felt the power, the clarity, the truth, then don't just watch in silence. Hit that subscribe button and become part of a movement where silence speaks louder than noise and truth hits harder than trends. Like this video if you're done playing small and staying quiet. Drop a comment below. Let the world know you're done entertaining people who underestimated your worth. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their detachment is power, not a flaw. This isn't just content, it's fuel for the ones who walk alone, think deeper and move smarter. Welcome to the Sigma space. We don't shout, we build and disappear.